Okay. So we are again reading The Earth Dragon Awakes by Lawrence Yep. And since it's a bedtime story and the lights went out, I just left the lights out, which means I'm probably going to make lots of mistakes. Just like a real bedtime story because I'm reading in the dark. So we only have a little bit more of the book left, and we have to find out what happens to Chin and Ah Sing and to the Travises, and also to all the other people in San Francisco. What was the end result of this earthquake? 8 p.m. Wednesday, April 18th, 1906, North San Francisco. So this is up near the Ferry Building. The Travises have fled to the northern edge of San Francisco. The waters of the bay roll by cold and swift. They squeeze into a field with everyone else. Nearby Fort Mason is full of soldiers. So nowadays, if you've ever been to where the bay is, there is a big, huge, long park, and it's called Crissy Field, and a lot of people fly kites there. Crissy Field was built on top, or it was built on like a lot of landfill, and after the 1906 earthquake, there was even more landfill pushed out. Garbage was pushed out into the bay, rubble, and so the north part of San Francisco is like the shakiest part of San Francisco because it's built on top of landfill. In 1906, it was built on top of landfill. And in 1989, when the Loma Prieta quake hit, it was built on top of 1906 earthquake landfill. And then when 1989, when the Loma Prieta quake happened, they pushed more landfill out into the bay. So there's even more landfill now in the northern part of San Francisco. So they're kind of reaching the end of their rope. They're where the water is. Either you get on a boat or you get in the water so that the fire doesn't burn you. I mean, that's your last resort, is jumping into the bay so that you don't get burned, right? That's how quickly and how fast the fires were sweeping across San Francisco. They squeeze onto a field with everyone else. Nearby Fort Mason is full of soldiers. Next to them, a big man sings a song in German to his wife and daughter. His little concertina looks like a toy in his huge hands. On their left, a Mexican family makes dinner by a campfire. The mother makes tortillas on a flat rock. Henry has never heard so many languages. The whole world seems to have camped here. San Francisco was a very cosmopolitan city back then because of the gold rush. Right? So there were people from all over the world that had settled there. Some have brought tents. Others make them out of sticks and blankets. Mr. Travis makes a tent out of one umbrella and the tablecloth. He jams the shaft into the dirt and opens the top, and then he spreads the tablecloth over it. The fine lace is like a giant spider web. I told you the umbrellas would come in handy, Mrs. Travis says. Mr. Travis winks at his son. Then he teases his wife. All right, maybe they were useful just this once. It is almost like a gigantic picnic, but there is no safe water for Henry. The only water is in the bay. It is too salty to drink. There is plenty of liquor, but Henry cannot touch it. Some adults do, and they get very noisy. Soon everyone grows silent. Flames fringe the hilltops. Smoke towers over them. It is like a giant black worm. It swallows the moon and the stars. Again, great language, great descriptive language. It's like a giant black worm, which is swallowing the moon and stars. It's fantastic writing. Henry hugs Sawyer. His pet licks the soot from his face. Nearby, a man holds up a picture of St. Francis towards the flames. San Francisco was named after that saint. The man's thick black beard twitches on his chin as he prays loudly in Italian. The fire seems like a living monster now. It has taken their homes. Now it wants them. It reaches out fiery paws, but they can run no farther. The bay is behind them. No one knows what to do. They watch the fire creep toward them. 9 p.m. to 10 p.m., Wednesday, April 18th, 1906, Nob Hill, San Francisco. The eastern fire sweeps through Chinatown toward Nob Hill and stops. Firemen and soldiers and volunteers make a stand on the steep slope of Nob Hill. So Nob Hill is still in San Francisco, and it's got like a lot of really nice houses and hotels, like kind of up at the top of Nob Hill. So it's kind of one of the fancier neighborhoods of the city. And it's, if you've ever been to Macy's or to like the shopping area downtown in San Francisco, it's Nob Hill's right up from that towards the west. Like a hungry beast, the Eastern Fire eyes the fancy hotels and mansions there. It reaches for them again and again. Each time the firemen force it back. Downtown firemen and soldiers hold back the ham and egg fire as well. They protect the big hotels and stores. Then a fire starts in a downtown theater. It could be a careless soldiers who lit it. It could be someone who hates the owner. No one knows. Soon sparks fly everywhere. The firemen downtown are caught between the theater fire and the ham and egg fire. Frantically, they roll up their hoses and then they pull their wagons down fiery canyons. The wind fans, that's a great description, because if you can imagine like the buildings on either side of a street on fire, and you're a fireman and you're trying to get out, and you're right down the middle in the road and the buildings on either side, it makes a canyon of fire that you're traveling down. The wind fans the flames of the ham and egg fire. It grows higher and stronger, sweeping like a wave over downtown. It races up Nob Hill toward the other firemen. The Nob Hill defenders will be trapped. The Eastern Fire is in front of them. The ham and egg fire is coming from the side. They leave too. With a roar of triumph, the Eastern Fire surges up Nob Hill. Mansions and hotels sit helpless. Their huge windows shatter from the heat. Expensive wallpaper and paintings blacken and burst into flame. Costly rugs shrivel and burn. Fancy brass doorknobs melt. Fragile glassware shatters. Antique furniture and silverware become blackened lumps. Huge crystal chandeliers crash from burning ceilings. On top of Nob Hill, the ham and egg fire and the Eastern Fire merge. So now these two huge fires have joined together to make one. They become one giant monster now. It is the fireman's worst nightmare. 11 p.m., Wednesday, April 18th, 1906, Oakland Waterfront. Chin and Ah Sing's cousin, Ah Bing, buys fish from fishermen. Then he sells the catch to stores and restaurants. His warehouse is at the Oakland Waterfront. He welcomes Chin and Ah Sing. I thought you were dead. Almost, Ah Sing says. They go out to the pier and they stare at the blazing city. Fire covers San Francisco's hills, changing night into an eerie twilight. It colors the billowing clouds of smoke a brick red. It reflects off the bay waters like a flight of scarlet arrows. Aquan is with them. He brushes some ash from his sleeve. No one's alive in that, he says. The Earth's dragon has taken a terrible revenge. Poor Henry, Chin says. Poor everyone, his father says. Noon, Thursday, April 19th, 1906, North San Francisco. Flames fill the sky. Clouds of smoke roll overhead like copper waves. At noon, it is only a sullen twilight. The heat and the ash make it hard to breathe. Soot covers everything. Lost dogs and cats prowl all around. Henry holds on to Sawyer tight. They are still at the northern edge of San Francisco. His thirsty pet wants to drink from the salty bay. Henry is tempted himself. His mouth is parched. The water rolls by so close. No one sings or plays instruments anymore. Everybody is too scared. They huddle together. Some stare, some weep, some pray. They all listen. Boom, boom, boom. The firemen and soldiers are still blowing up buildings and creating fire breaks. The flames keep coming anyway. Mr. Travis coughs. I want you to know one thing. I love you both very much. Mrs. Travis hugs him and Henry, and we love you. Henry feels like crying, but the tears don't come. He is too dry inside. All of a sudden, people begin to scream in terror. Runaway horse, someone yells in the distance. The horse is a big beast. It usually pulls heavy wagons. At that moment, it is free. Its hooves thunder as it gallops. Its eyes are wide with fear. A broken tethering strap dangles from its harness. People jump to either side. The panicky horse cuts through the crowd like a ship through the sea. Henry holds Sawyer tight and gets up. The little German girl next to him just sits and stares. She is too terrified to move. Henry stumbles over her. Desperately, Mrs. Travis picks up a pink parasol. She opens and closes it. She yells at the top of her lungs. Mr. Travis grabs a red umbrella and flaps it too. He shouts as well. The bright shapes of the umbrellas swell and shrink fast, startling the horse. It stops and rears up. Its hooves flash in the air. Mr. Travis drops the umbrella and darts in. The horse sets its forelegs down for a moment. Mr. Travis grabs its bridle. He has timed it perfectly. Their Mexican and German neighbors help him hold the horse. Mr. Travis speaks soothing words. The huge horse trembles but listens and stays still. Mrs. Travis folds her parasol in triumph. What did I tell you about the umbrellas? Mr. Travis bows. I will never laugh at your collection again, he promises. All right, we will stop right there. The magic umbrellas saved the day again. All right, have a good night. I will see you tomorrow night, too, for your bedtime story. Thanks for joining me.